Hi, welcome back to another series of Australian Story. I'm Leslie Jolly, a history teacher here at Devonport High School in Tasmania. A few years ago, the young man you're about to meet bailed me up before class and told me of his audacious plan. He wanted to fly solo around Australia and raise awareness about a heartbreaking issue that can affect young people everywhere. Bob Bramley had no aeroplane and no money, but he did have an incredible drive, and what he managed to pull off was amazing.
A 16-year-old Tasmanian boy is aiming to break the world record to become the youngest pilot to circumnavigate Australia solo.
All right, boys, let's clean it then, shall we?
No, Bob, what does your plane come under? Kitchen, bathroom, glass, multi-purpose?
Or dusting?
I've never really met a guy quite like Bob, you know, especially a 16-year-old that just seems so much older than his years.
Surviving Turbulence stands for everything that I've worked for over the last few months.
I just saw this great energy, this kid that just realised that everything was in front of him and he could achieve anything.
Careful around the stickers because I don't know how they're going to go yet. When the original idea for this trip came up, it purely was I wanted to break a record, but it quickly developed into more. I almost lost 2 friends to suicide, so it made sense to do it for a cause that I was passionate about.
Bob Bramley is only just old enough to have his learner's car licence. He says he'll try to break the stigma of discussing suicide by talking about youth mental health at stops along the way.
It is very scary having him in a plane.
Excited, Bob?
Oh, yeah.
But as parents, we had to work through that journey of letting go, of letting Bob have a go to try it.
Any last words, Mum?
Come back, yeah.
What we do is risky. You know, there's never anything easy about flying.
It's really happening.
You know, I've never tried to achieve something this big before. You know, what if it doesn't work? What if something goes wrong?
Clear up.
But this is something I have to do as a person.
Bob lives in a place called Kindred, which is this beautiful farming community on the northwest coast of Tasmania.
We're a really regular kind of family. Mum, Dad, 3 kids. We've got some sheep and we mostly do crops, pyrethrum and poppies.
There's so much to do. You know, there's plenty of land to be camping on, you know, dams to be kayaking and swimming on. Jump on the bike, just go around the farm a little bit. Apart from that, there's always little jobs here and there that have to be done.
Bob is an ordinary 16-year-old country kid from Tassie. But he's just passionate about anything he applies himself to. No matter what he does, he goes out and gets it.
I'd always had an interest in aviation and flying and whatnot, but I was about 11 years old when I realised that's sort of what I wanted to do and set my goal to become an airline pilot.
Bob was only 15 when he first came along to learn to fly.
Was it full hour?
That's exactly now, yeah. It wasn't an easy path to follow, but he had the enthusiasm and he was a naturally talented pilot.
Devonport traffic, good afternoon. Jabiru 7179 is currently 10 miles to the west of the field.
I hopped into this aircraft and it was my first ever opportunity at taking control of a light aircraft. It was just the most amazing, surreal experience. There's no words that can describe it.
3000, inbound and on descent.
I went on the very first flight that he could do with a passenger, and I think I went on record saying he's a better pilot than he is a driver. My cheeks are sore from grinning. My eyes are leaking. It was fantastic. It was really, really good. So proud.
He didn't just have to spend hours and hours training. He had to spend hours working to get the money to pay for the flight lessons.
Just hurry up. I'm all ready to go. I left my school bag at work on Friday, so I've got none of my stuff with me.
Bob was having a regular kind of upbringing for around this area, and then he was confronted with something that had never occurred to him could happen in his peer group.
I almost lost two very close friends to suicide within 3 weeks of one another. A friend of mine, I noticed she'd put a post up and she was quite unhappy and upset about something. And I didn't know what, and I spoke to her. I said, hey, what's going on? What's up? And she just went, oh, look, no, it's nothing, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. And then she attempted to take her own life. I don't think there's anything in this world that probably hurt me more than seeing somebody so close to me that I knew so well, thinking that life wasn't worth living and attempting to take their own life. It really broke me as a person.
And I think that if she hadn't built up the courage to be able to go and talk to her parents and say what she'd done, by 8 o'clock that night, she probably would have been dead.
I wasn't equipped for it. They don't do a school class on, how to prevent somebody taking their own life. And then very, very similar circumstances happened with a friend of mine that lives interstate that had attempted to take her life in almost exactly the same way.
The second time round, I had a much better idea of how to deal with it.
I did whatever I could, but she wouldn't listen to a word I had to say. She'd said to me, she said, look, if you tell anyone about this, I'm never going to talk to you again, ever. I'd been having a few conversations with her boyfriend over time, and I messaged him and said, look, you need to get in there, you need to help her. And he replied to it saying, look, that's not my job.
I said, why not? He said, because this is her choice. It's not,
Really?
It's not for you to be intervening, and it's not for you to worry about. She's my girlfriend, I'll worry about it when it comes to it.
And so I jumped onto Google and I searched for every family with that last name in Queensland, until eventually I found her father's mobile number and I phoned him up. And the next morning I got a phone call from her dad again saying, we had no idea that was going on, and thanking me for, finding a way to get in contact with him to help her. Both of them went to hospital. They both had time in sort of emergency response, and both of them are okay now.
Suicide is the biggest killer of our young people in Australia. We've seen suicide rates for young people actually increase, so a 20% increase over the last decade. And we also know that around 10% of young people will self-harm at some point in their lifetime.
I looked into it a bit more in Devonport and the northwest coast here of Tasmania. We have some of the highest suicide rates in the country. I thought, something needs to be done about this. I need to be making a difference somewhere.
Bob came into class one day and he said, Miss Jolly, I've been thinking of flying around Australia. But he also had the idea of raising awareness for youth suicide prevention. And I went, oh, OK, right, how are you going to do that?
With the TV, Miss Jolly.
I had no idea how to organise flying around Australia, but I knew that he'd work out how to do it. I didn't have any doubt that he would.
This was a really provocative thing to do.
I thought, yeah, let's go for it. So we test drove various ideas and came up with the idea of surviving turbulence, which I think was quite brilliant, really.
I first met Bob at the farmer's market, and he was there selling these dirty carrots that had just been pulled right out of the ground to pay for the flight lessons. Bob told me about his idea to become the youngest pilot to fly around Australia solo. It was such a crazy idea. I said, look, I'm going to write a story in the paper for you, but I want to also make a film because this is just such an incredible thing to take on.
Every day prior to flight, the aircraft's just briefly checked over to make sure there's no damage to the wingtips or anything that would make the aircraft unflyable.
Do you really have to do all of this every time you fly?
Every day. Not many of us like getting to 200 feet off the ground and going, that's a problem.
Part of why I was so invested in Bob's story is because me, like many other people, has had their life touched by suicide. You know, it's everywhere. And I think having a young kid at that age wanting to do something about it was just so powerful for me. The idea of flying around Australia, it's not just technically challenging, it's also expensive, you know? You need thousands of dollars, you know, you need a plane. And Bob didn't really have any of that.
Who's going to lend their aeroplane worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to a kid? Who's going to insure it? How am I going to get fuel? How am I going to find somewhere to stay? You know, there's so many things.
So today we've got a teleconference meeting with the head of sponsorship and the head of marketing for Westpac.
There'd just been like this 2-month period where no one had wanted to get involved.
My name's Robert Bramley. I'm from Scouts Air Activities Tasmania.
And then Westpac got involved and as the major sponsor and gave $15,000.
So there we go. We can pay for the aircraft now. That's big relief.
This great community of people came round and started to back him. From the Aero Club, the Farmers Inu, to the Scouts.
We now have 4 weeks and 6 days to go, so it's getting very much down to the crunch. I have one last thing to do with my training, and we now have an aircraft confirmed as of this afternoon. So all is set and ready to go.
Righto, so you've got to get permission to come in here.
Bob had to do a lot of work to prepare for this.
Thing of potential aircraft that are going to arrive.
He had to get the appropriate licences, he had to do the navigation studies.
So when you're planning into controlled airspace, you would generally try and plan via a VFR approach point.
The vastness of Australia will be a challenge you need to come to grips with. And along with that is the different weather. Thunderstorms have the capacity to pull an aeroplane apart. They just they're so powerful.
9 out of 10 people say to me, aren't you worried that Bob's going to go off and fly around Australia? No, because it's something Bob really wants to do. And he's training hard for it. And if he makes the worst mistake, he'll be doing something he loves, won't he? And he'll have done more already in his short life than lots of adults will have ever dared to do.
He's still on his L plates on the ground, but a 16-year-old Tasmanian boy has his sights on breaking a flying record.
Bob Bramley hopes to beat the previous record of Hobart pilot Oliver O'Halloran, who was 17 when he became the youngest pilot to circumnavigate the country in 2017.
At the time, I was 16 and 9 months, which gave me 4.5 months to fly the 15,000 kilometres around Australia and to break Ollie's record. To add to the challenge, there was a younger guy in Queensland named Liam Murray, who was also out to get the record, who I didn't think his record would qualify.
That's it. Hey!
2 days and he will be gone for 3 weeks and will hopefully be back. If he's not... Yeah, Bob, if you're not, I'm in the wheel, aren't I?
No, you're not in the wheel.
Ah, what a shame. Well, apparently I'm not the wheel. Yes.
Latham and Sam, my 2 best mates. It's always been the 3 of us through school and through Scouts. I mean, at least he did a good job of hiding all this from Mum. I think if I ever felt that low and needed support, I think they'd definitely be the boys that I'd go to see, and the ones that I think would be there to support me and to help me through it.
I found the most, glorious toilet paper, very, very cheap.
4-ply, yes!
4-ply and it's scented. Scented and it was $5.
So the day we took off from Devonport, it was just breathtaking how many people had come out to see me off.
I feel good-ish. I'm gonna cry though.
Big day.
He can do it though. He can do it.
I actually hope he makes it back. We all love Bob, though we don't usually say it.
The teenager will travel to the furthest corners of the country to talk about suicide prevention.
Thank you again to everyone that's come out today. Surviving turbulence isn't me, it's not the plane, it's everybody. It's the community getting behind us all. Thank you.
Don't die on us, Bob.
Yeah. Alrighty. Let's do it.
When it came to getting into the aircraft, at first there was this really big rush of excitement.
Devonport traffic, clear all runways and taxi to the GA area.
When I finally took off, I got 100 feet off the ground and it just hit me like a wave. It's just ecstatic. So I flew from Devonport to Flinders Island, across to Wilson's Promontory in Victoria, and then on to Merimbula.
Bob planned to fly anti-clockwise around Australia solo and unassisted. Bob was flying somewhere between Wollongong and the Gold Coast when all of a sudden he got an oil pipe leak.
The main oil line in the engine had blown out in the side of the pipe, and I'd lost a quarter of the oil in the aeroplane. Anything can happen in an instant.
If he hadn't caught it in time, who knows what would have happened up there. I really wanted to capture not just what he did in the air, but the people he met along the way and hear a lot more of those stories.
I'm going to give you a hug because I'm sorry. I'm so proud of you, mate. Like, no, thank seriously, you. You're either nuts or you've got a good cause, which I think is the heart.
It's both. The plan was particularly to reach out to scout groups, to share that message around youth suicide prevention and say, look, we can help you if you're struggling. You know, we've got the support networks in place to be able to help you. Thank you all very much.
We have teenage sons and youth suicide is prevalent in their circles as well. So when we looked at his journey and what he was doing, we just thought we'd support this young man who's trying to bring a bigger voice to it.
Yeah, so it's all working in partnership with Beyond Blue to raise awareness for youth suicide prevention. It made quite a difference on my life, and I think it's really important that we get the community talking about this issue.
I'm joined tonight by Bob Bramley.
For us, the main message is for you guys to be able to connect with your friends and family if you're feeling down.
Haley. Madison.
The main goal for me is to get people talking, you know, to break the stigma surrounding it, and it'll lead for youth being more willing to talk to people and tell them that something's wrong, you know, to open up to people.
It's pretty cool, like, yeah.
Yeah, what he's doing, it's an adventure and he's doing it for a cause, yeah.
It was in Cairns that Bob finally realised that he might not be getting the record.
I received a phone call to let me know that the requirements for the record had changed, which meant that the attempt made by Liam Morrie was now a valid attempt, and it meant that there was no chance at me being the youngest, and that Liam was going to be approximately 2 months younger than me by the time I'd completed the flight.
It's definitely one hell of a shock, and definitely a really big down point. You know, especially there's so much work that's gone into making sure this trip happened.
Well, I mean, it was devastating to get that news, really. You know, I'd sort of spent a year and a half planning for this journey, and I was all set to be, you know, a world record holder. And it took me a couple of days to sort of work out how I was going to tell everyone. But it sort of made me realise as well, now that the record doesn't matter and it doesn't matter how many days it takes me to do the trip, I can sort of double down on youth suicide prevention and start doing more for the cause.
Ultra 1065, it's Brecky with the Big J. Now, one of the reasons that you've done this is to raise awareness of mental health.
Nobody really knows what's going on inside somebody else's head.
So it's good to ask that question, are you okay?
Exactly, spot on.
When I was in Perth, I had a chance to meet a lady named Deborah Brumby. Deborah had lost her son to suicide, and it was heartbreaking.
Jimmy was my first. He loved his sports.
This is him playing rugby. That was one of his most favourite things.
Yeah. He was so kind and so gentle and very impulsive. I think that may have played a part in the choice he made. The last photo I took of him, I look at these photos and I just can't believe he's not here. He was in year 8 and had been suspended from school. He was grounded. The last words I said to him were I didn't believe a word he says anymore because of the mischief he'd been getting into.
She told me about the day she lost her 13-year-old son. Just an awful, sudden moment. Happened so quickly everything changed. And she reckons the instant her son decided to take his life was the instant he regretted it.
Just in a moment of despair and disappointment, I think, in himself, made the worst choice he could ever have made in his life. That this isn't a choice to make. Not for a teenager or a young person. Once you make this choice, there's no coming back.
Deborah was someone that really showed what happens to the people left behind by suicide. To show that pain that never really goes away and just permeates every part of your life. I walked out of that interview and just really showed to me why Bob's trip was so important. Because this is what happens when people take their life.
With what you're doing, you're not going to know how many.
That's exactly right. You know?
It's not going to be a number.
You can never know.
But know that you will.
Yeah.
Okay?
We need Bobs in every single family, every single workplace, every single school, every single community.
There are people's lives that it's affected.
The best thing a young person can do is to actually reach out to their friend and say, I'm worried about you. I've noticed these things. I care about you and I want you to live. How can I help you? And then the most important thing to do is to stop and listen. Don't try and solve their problems for them because that's not your job as a young person or a friend. But actually just listen. Call Beyond Blue or Lifeline together. Encourage your friend to go and talk to their parent or their teacher about it.
We just need to stop these kids
That's it.
doing this. It's any way we can.
Every little difference. You know,
Absolutely. If we can just get it out there and just remind them it's, you know, nothing to gain, everything to lose. There are too many kids making the same choice that Jimmy made.
Please be safe.
And we need to somehow make families and parents aware that this can happen to your child. And he's bringing awareness to that. And we need as much awareness out there as possible.
Thank you. Today's the final day in the mainland, so from here down to Tassie. It'll be good to be home, but it'd be nice to keep going. I hope that through surviving Turbulence, it's prompted people to go and talk to their GP or to a counsellor or somebody.
Big day today, my boy's coming home. I'm just excited, pleased, relieved that it all went safely. He's been 2 weeks off school, so he has a load of homework to catch up on.
So he's coming down to land at about 11 o'clock today, and everyone's just pumped. Roll here, ready for him.
I'm not going to let go. I'm going to be clinging on to him the whole entire time.
Bob lets me be in charge of the important stuff. I've been allowed to make a balloon arch. Bob's had a long journey, he's fatigued, so I just need to add a bit of pizzazz. Keeping your priorities right, you know, your boy's flown all the way around Australia. You've just got to have your balloon arch, haven't you? The
3 weeks and 15,000 kilometres of flying leading to this, an aviation celebration as Bob Bramley completed his solo circumnavigation of Australia. The 16-year-old made 40 stops on his 3-week trip.
Absolutely amazing. It's been one hell of a journey, that's for sure, you know.
So we had very good weather all the way, navigated beautifully, and arrived on time.
While he's just missed out on the record, Bob isn't letting the setback clip his wings.
Look, records will always be broken, but I'm sure somewhere in his future will be aviation in his career.
Some mums have to set curfews for their teenagers. Yours has just flown 15,000 kilometres around the country. How proud are you?
I'm very proud. I think he's probably gone a boy and come home a man.
Back to the real world today, unfortunately. But, oh well. It was going to come sometime, wasn't it? So.
I went from that highest of high feeling hopping out of that aeroplane in Devonport to the lowest place I've been. Yeah, I felt like I'd peaked. I felt like that was it. I'd achieved all that I was going to achieve. There was nothing more.
Bob had spent weeks, you know, being greeted at airports by crowds, being interviewed on the radio, being, you know, a little bit of a celebrity. So I think it was just a bit hard for him to go back to normal life. And he wanted to keep getting out there and spreading that message.
Throughout my journey, I couldn't talk to every person, I couldn't connect with every family, but breaking the stigma surrounding it is what I can do.
We're not done yet. There's more of these talks, more presentations, and maybe a few ideas for something new in the future as well.
Tonight, shut down. The impact in Tasmania has left many in shock.
When COVID hit in March, every single one of those planned talks, those planned conferences that I was going to be going to was stopped. Going into year 12 and going into next year, my future's always been aviation. It became very apparent very quickly that the opportunities for a career in aviation in the next 5 years were dwindling very quickly. So for me, my mental health got particularly bad.
You know, drink?
Yeah, shout. Cheers, big man.
It came down to my mates being there for me, to Latham and Sam being there to support me, and to realising that I was that bad. And it came down to me being at work one night and Latham coming in and seeing me there just miserable.
Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's you. It's never Bob.
And he said, right, let's go, let's organise something, let's all meet up, let's all catch up.
Right, you got tiny thighs.
Yeah, it's all about the long legs.
It's those mates that help you to move forward. It was my mates that helped to bring me out of it.
This is like defying the odds here, boys.
We've seen far more young people reach out to Beyond Blue in the last few months than we've ever seen. Studies are showing that around 75% of young people are reporting their mental health has been affected by the pandemic.
Do they mar or do they bar? That.
What I would say to anybody that was trying to help their friend is that there's no one simple solution.
It was COVID stuff.
There's no one thing that you can say to this person that'll make it all better, no one thing that'll help to bring them back from the edge. Be there for that person. Show them that they have your full support. Show them that people care about them. And show them that they matter.